This is the Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing for week ending May 26, 2012. The media is this week addressed by Chief Secretary Orville London and Tourism Secretary Oswald Williams. Mr. Williams begins with word that $0.5 million will be paid by the THA to the Chinrego Wheelers Cycling Club for the Tobago Cycle Classic.
This has come about because of the failure of Ministry of Sport to meet its commitments to support sporting activities in Tobago. You will recall that we would have had the recent situation where the golfers were not supported in an effort to have the Golf Classic, that tournament in January, which would have caused the Tobago House of Assembly again to intervene to clean up outstanding commitments which were not honored by the Ministry of Sport. Let me just point out that according to the information that Mr. Jeff Charles has provided, it is just a repeat of the year before, where in 2010, again, he would have received commitment from the Ministry of Sport to support the Tobago Cycling Classic, and that commitment was not honored. So for the second year running, we have a situation where that commitment to the Tobago Cycling Classic has not been honored. We view this trend with interest because it has been traditional, it is customary in the past that these sporting events would have received support, and we look with concern at this new trend. In that whole scenario is the question of the role of the minister in the Ministry of Finance, representative for Tobago West, Dr. Delman Baker, because one of the common elements in both situations, as it relates to the golf and again to the cycling classic, is that on both occasions the commitment was given through Dr. Baker. The commitment from the Ministry of Sport was given through Dr. Baker to these sporting organizations. In both cases, these commitments were not honored, and we have not heard from Dr. Baker as to why the commitments were not honored and what happened.
The Tourism Secretary then revisited the issue of the cancellation of cruise ships to Tobago's shores.
The Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago has been communicating with the cruise lines abroad, indicating to them that they are not doing business with the Cavallo group of companies. Our concern at the Tobago House of Assembly, of course, is the fact that more than 90% of the cruises that call at the Port of Scarborough use the Cavallo agencies as their agent. Now, I am not Mr. Cavallo's lawyer, but the issue is, what impact is that likely to have on cruise for Tobago? Already we have got word that one of the cruise lines which was affected in the fiasco last March has decided to cancel all the cruises that it had planned to Tobago for the upcoming season 2012-2013. We have a situation now where communication is being sent abroad to deal with a domestic situation which is very likely to impact negatively on the credibility of the Tobago cruise industry. And we find it strange. Bear in mind that we are dealing with an agency of the state and a company that is locally owned, locally registered, and is doing business locally. Yet we have a situation where, in order to treat with a domestic dispute, an agency of the state is going to do things that will affect the international relations, the international credibility of the cruise industry here in Tobago, and of course in Trinidad and Tobago. And we are very concerned about this trend. At no point in time was there any communication with the Tobago House of Assembly before, during, even after these events were implemented. We are calling once more on the powers that be to move speedily to bring an end to this trend and to take steps to repair whatever damage may have been caused by this action on the part of the Port Authority, the board of the Port Authority, to tarnish the image of Tobago's cruise.
Facing the media, the Chief Secretary added his voice to the issues raised by Mr. Williams, beginning with the Cycling Classic.
I think all of us here are aware of what happened last year and the impact that it had and the potential that it has to, of course, benefit Tobago and provide another avenue or another area in which the Tobago can, of course, derive benefit and become more attractive. We all saw the ESPN report, and of course that in itself is very significant from a perspective of marketing. So we are very disappointed and of course quite concerned when we started getting information from the organizer, Mr. Jeffrey Charles, including a letter dated since November the 15th, 2010. And I can make copies of these letters available to you. And in that letter, Mr. Charles actually listed from March 2010 right on to November 2010, where he said that in November 2010, after many communication with the Ministry of Sports Secretary and Minister Baker, inquiring about the Ministry of Sport approving sponsorship of TT $150,000. I was eventually told by Minister Baker that Minister Roberts had indicated to him a few days before that we would not be able to support the 2010 event again, but have confirmed that assistance will be given to the 2011 event. The Minister of Sport's surprising and curious decision to renege on payment of these funds without any reason for doing so created a major shortfall in the 2010 event budget requirement. So that's 2010. And then in 2011, on the 20th of March 2012, Mr. Charles sent an email to the Secretary, Mr. Secretary of Education, Youth Affairs and Sport, Mr. Whitney Alfred. In fact, it was a plea. Good morning, Secretary Alfred. I've been getting a major runaround from the Minister of Sport with the Ministry of Sport disbursement of the approved fund of $500,000 for the Tobago Cycling Classic 2011 event. Because of this, some very important event providers have not been paid to date. This includes the International Sporting Network, ESPN, for the extensive coverage and broadcast of the Tobago Cycling Classic event around the world. This is a major embarrassment for the Tobago Cycling Classic management and can have a negative impact on the event and for Tobago. This strange behavior taken by the Honorable Minister of Sport to renege on the Ministry of Sport's commitment in 2010 and is now attempting to do the same for the 2011 event is unbelievable, outrageous, and extremely irresponsible to say the least, especially with so much at stake for Tobago. please see attached all supporting documents, invoices, etc. And then he writes to us, and he writes to Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams is now 8 months since the conclusion of the 2011 event, and more importantly, 4 months away from the 2012 event. I know Mr. London and you are doing all you can to get Mr. Roberts to honor the commitment to this event, but we all know that this minister seems to be alone to himself and a loose cannon at the best of times. He has, I am kindly asking that the THA assist in settling this T1 $500,000 as soon as possible so that we can go full speed ahead with the 2010 event. So in other words, the point we're making here is that we had a choice, or maybe we had no choice. Because here it is that the Tobago House of Assembly was not the agency that made the commitment, but the point out there is that Tobago's reputation is at stake. And in a situation where we're just a couple months away from the 2012 event, and in a situation where we run the risk of alienating ESPN and of course, on the other hand, not just alienating them, but placing ourselves in a position where we could not benefit from the relationship that was developing quite satisfactorily, the Tobago House of Assembly had no choice but to pay the funding and hope that the fallout would be, well, at least alleviated, because obviously there is going to be some fallout. And this is very reminiscent of the situation with the Gulf, because it is exactly the same scenario. Commitments made by the TDC, commitments made by the Ministry of Sport, commitments not kept. The event is underfunded. Persons to whom monies are owed are not paid. The persons start to give Tobago a bad name. Tobago's image in that particular area is obviously undermined, and the Tobago House of Assembly is almost embarrassed into coming to the rescue. And in the case of the Gulf, it costs us so far close to $1 million just to ensure that we put things to right. But I'll tell you what, from the Tobago House of Assembly's perspective, I find particularly disheartening, is when there is a public perception that it is the Tobago House of Assembly that must take the blame for those circumstances. I saw, for example, a letter in the Tobago News where one of the golfers is calling on the Tobago House of Assembly and the Chief Secretary to pay the monies, obviously giving the impression that it was the Tobago House of Assembly's fault. I want to just reiterate what we said before. The Tobago House of Assembly committed $300,000 to this event. This we paid, and paid very early. What we are attempting to do is to rescue the image and the reputation of the event, and of course, more importantly, the image and the reputation of Tobago. So even if we're doing it, and at this point in time we have no choice, it must be known and everybody must understand that we're not doing it because we're guilty of anything. We're doing it because of our care and concern for the image of Tobago and our recognition that if this is allowed to happen, regardless of the circumstances, we will find ourselves in a situation where we are blacklisted by the cycling fraternity and the golfing fraternity. And in a situation where we're trying to widen our appeal, this obviously is going to be quite disastrous. And you know, when something happens once, you tell yourself it's a mistake. Twice you tell yourself it might be unfortunate. But when it happens 3 and 4 times, you're beginning to wonder if it is a trend and if people are deliberately attempting to undermine the progress and the image of this assembly. Because the situation with respect to the point Mr. Williams raised vis-a-vis the situation at the port is one that is mind-boggling, to say the least. Because for the life of me, I still cannot understand 2 things. One, I cannot understand how a responsible decision maker who recognizes the importance of the tourism sector to Tobago and just as importantly, the importance of the cruise ship subsector in the tourism sector could be so insensitive as to take a decision which would lead to thousands of persons not being able to land in Tobago, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars to be lost to the Tobago economy, and the livelihoods of scores of Tobagonians jeopardized because of what I would consider an internal challenge or disagreement between him and a financier. And that a minister of government, in this case Minister Maharaj, should ignore the pleas of the Tobago House of Assembly, but not only that, ignore his own colleague who made a commitment to the Tobago House of Assembly that he would get him to have the decision reversed. And obviously, in a scenario where people are not prepared to be sensitive to the plight of the Tobago House of Assembly and the people of Tobago, we have got to ask ourselves whether this is simply insensitivity or a certain degree of cynicism, where in their desire to make this assembly look bad, they are prepared to jeopardize the interests of the people of Tobago. And I am very serious about that. And as I said, the documentation is here. And when you look at the documentation, you recognize that this is not just us talking. This is, of course, the persons who were in fact disadvantaged. In the case of the Trinbago cyclists, in the case of the Gulf Academy, and of course in the case of Mr. Cavallo, and of course all those providers, whether they're taxi drivers, whether they're tour guides, whether they're the people up at the Cocoa Place, Mr. Dove and his people, whether the people at Pigeon Point, all of those providers who have been disadvantaged and who are even going to be more disadvantaged, because you've got to understand that in the tourism sector, they would do their planning 1 year ahead, and we have already started seeing fallout for the 2012 season. A meeting, the Minister of Sport has asked the Secretary for a meeting, which I suppose he will attend, but that meeting, the Minister of Tourism has asked for a meeting with respect to the port situation, but that meeting is quite next month. And I don't know if by that time the damage will not have already been done.
With the financial complex set to open, Mr. London said the Assembly would not be present at the UDECOT organized handover ceremony.
The financial complex is a project which is a Tobago House of Assembly project, paid for by the Tobago House of Assembly, and you have UDECOT as our project manager working for the Tobago House of Assembly. Understand me? And I'll tell you why I'm going down it so slowly. So in other words, we are the owners, we are the clients, we are the boss, UDECOT works for us. And after years, during which UDECOT did not always perform at the best, we finally reached the point where UDECOT is supposed to deliver to us our financial complex that we pay for with Tobago people money. And we get a letter, the Secretary of Finance, the Secretary of Infrastructure, and the Chief Secretary. And the letter comes from the Chief Operating Officer of UDECOT. And I want to read the letter. I'll tell you, it is provocation. The Urban Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago, UDECOT, are pleased to formally invite you, that is me, to the official handing over ceremony of the keys to the Scarborough Financial Complex, signaling the completion of Phase 1, the base building works. This event will take place on Friday, June the 1st, 2012. You're telling me when it's taking place? Dr. the Honorable Rudal Muninal, Minister of the Housing and the Environment, will be officiating at this event and will hand over the keys to the Tobago House of Assembly to formalize the successful completion of the base building works contract. And listen to what they're telling the Secretary and the Chief Secretary. to confirm your attendance, or should you require any additional information, kindly contact Mrs. Roxanne Stapleton Wims, Public Relations Officer, 627-0083, extension 1251. Yours sincerely, Gray Kwan, Chief Operating Officer. Now tell me, isn't this provocation? We take Tobago people's money, build Tobago People Financial Complex, employ UDCOT to do it, and UDCOT is working for us. So UDCOT now has got to first prove to us, have you done your job? Because up to now, we are not certain that UDCOT has finished completing the job. And a functionary at UDCOT is going to write the secretaries and the chief secretary, inviting them to a function at a time designated by them, so that the minister, who has nothing to do with it, I don't even know if you drop him in Crown Point, he could find the financial complex, to come to hand over keys to us. Now, isn't that provocation? You tell me. How can somebody be so totally insensitive to believe that they can get away with this? But you know what they're hoping? That we'll say no. And we will say no. Because this ain't happening. Because they want to say we're petty. But we have no choice, and this is what is happening. We are being tested, and I'm saying that during this period, it is the mettle of the people of Tobago that is being tested. And we have got to determine whether we're going to stand up for what we believe and what we know is right. Because there's no way in the world can you have a situation where you have employed somebody to work for you, they finish work for you, and they are planning an event to open your building. Because that is what it is. Without even us telling them that the building is ready, because they have to meet with us, and we have to say, well, yes, this is all right, okay. No, this might take another week. That is how things are done. So I just want you to understand, and I want the Tobago and the country to understand what is happening. And you see, I'll tell you what is so cynical about this. All of us know why it is Friday, June the 1st. Because the cabinet is coming to Tobago. And the cabinet wants to indicate to Tobagonians that they're doing things for Tobagonians. So they're trying to, in a situation where they've been ignoring Tobago and just making mischief for years, for months, to pick up anything and to give Tobago people the impression that they're doing something. But Tobagonians are not stupid. We build it, we spend the money, we took the curse, we took the criticism for years. And they were in the forefront of doing that. Now the time comes, and after all the criticism, we're ready to deliver, you're coming to say handing over keys. That is not going to happen.
There was good news for TRHA monthly paid workers, as the Chief Secretary announced they will receive their arrears totaling $10 million.
And I want to make it very clear that this $10 million is in addition to an initial sum of $6,090,593, which would have been paid in December of 2011. So that the total sum will be somewhere in the vicinity of $16.5 million. This funding should be made available to the TRHA within the week, and we're hoping that they'll be able to effect the payment. Of course, we understand the mood of the employees, but you've got to bear in mind that there were some administrative issues, and that this money was not budgeted for, and therefore we had to be able to find money coming from other sources. So all of us are very relieved. I think nobody more so than the Secretary, relieved that we have been able to source the funding, and the commitment to the employees, these commitments will in fact be met. And I want the public to know that this is done in light of the continued delay, and I use the word delay very kindly, on the part of the ministry to pay the $100 million which is in the budget for the Division of Health and Social Services for the work on the hospital. And as I said, there are two things about the non-payment of this issue that should be of interest. One, we consider it to be a breach of the law because Parliament has appropriated the funding for the Tobago House of Assembly and to be utilized in a particular way, and therefore it should have been given to the Tobago House of Assembly quarterly and en bloc. In other words, every 3 months you get 25% of it. That has not happened. But in addition to that, as you would be aware, under the Dispute Resolution Commission, Tobago was supposed to get between a minimum of 4.03 to a maximum of 6.9. We usually, of course, will get the minimum. And this is what we got this year, the absolute minimum 4.03%. It's legal. It's not generous, but it's legal. But if we do not get the $100 million, which was part of that 4.03%, our advice is that the ministry and the government will have breached the terms of the Dispute Resolution Commission, because whatsoever you get less than $100 million will be less than 4.03%. I had discussion with the minister, and I think I would have told you they were very, amicable discussions, and I was very confident that the situation will have been addressed within weeks. And the report from the Secretary of Finance today is that the report has not, the funding has not been made available. And of course, we are in a very difficult situation where instead of the division have been able to draw down on this in order to pay the workers, we had to, of course, do some, cutting and contriving and to make sure that we got the money.
Thanks for watching the Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing for week ending May 26, 2012. For the Department of Information, I am Sophie Guillaume.